Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. Super excited for today's episode and today's guest. Joining me, we have Justin, another podcast host. You can find him on Twitter at Price Avocado. And Justin, go ahead and give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm super stoked to be here. I am Justin. I'm one half of Price of Avocado Toast. We're a podcast and financial coaching business that my wife got started, kind of looking to help millennials pay off debt, learn how to budget, and live life according to their values, is kind of what we like to say. So I'm stoked to be here and chat with you today. I've been scrolling through your catalog the last few weeks since you asked me to join, and I'm like seeing all these super dope creators on there. So I'm like, this is cool to join you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're right. It is quite a catalog. I believe this is episode 86. Which means you're the 86th different person who has come on here. So many great um, people, so many different paths, so many different journeys, so many different stories, and so many of them are great follows on Twitter, as I'm sure you follow many of them and know who they were. So, um, before we get into it any further, I do have to say congratulations because I know you have a brand new baby, like 10 days? Is it even 2 weeks old yet?
No, today is 1 week. So we're celebrating happily with a newborn boy, our first son, baby number 3, and we're able to be done. Dad is very happy that, I could be a young dad and like, be energized while my kids are young. So thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun week for the family.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. So again, I know well, I personally don't know because I don't have kids myself, but, having 3 young children and a newborn, I don't know how you found time to come on and be with me. Because I like, a couple weeks ago when we were setting this up, I was like before the baby's born, I was like, "No, take your time. We can set it up for, like, September, October, whenever things start to calm down for you." And you're like, "Okay, no, we'll do it next week." I'm like, "Alright."
I find that I don't know how you kind of relate to this or the listeners do, but in moments where I'm like maybe really jam packed, I kind of thrive, right?
Right.
So like when I have that thing that I need to go to next or that I'm looking forward to, I tend to just kind of like live a more productive life. And so with my wife taking a month off from the coaching business to be with the baby and stuff, I was like, well, I've got some time and she's a great mom and can handle the babies. They're all still in bed right now, relaxing and sleeping. So
Nice.
it wasn't too difficult to get here.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And yeah, you're saying they're still in bed because it's earlier in the morning. You're out there on the west coast of the US of A.
Yeah, I'm sure most people are still, awake at this point at 8 a.m. But I think with a 1 week old newborn, my wife gets a free pass.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. All right. Well, let's get into talking about, I guess, maybe some of your personal path and journey and what brought you to becoming a coach for others, in your age group.
Yeah, definitely. So my wife and I kind of have a wild story. When I was 25 years old, I received a wrongful death lawsuit payout. Or I should say, actually, it was 24. I hadn't even turned 25 yet. Of $600,000. My grandmother passed away from mesothelioma, which is asbestos caused lung cancer,
My dad
and
passed away from the exact same thing.
it is brutal.
Yeah.
It is really brutal, and I know that people see the commercials, talking about lawsuits and stuff, but it is a not fun disease, um, to
No.
pass away from. I know that the last few years of my grandma's life were pretty tough because of it, and, when she passed away, my grandfather filed a wrongful death lawsuit on her behalf and, was awarded some money, and, my father had passed away, so his winnings, I shouldn't say winnings, maybe earnings, came to
Yeah.
his heirs, which is me, my brother, and my sister. So when I was 24 years old, I received $600,000 in lawsuit payout, and I had no clue what to do with money. I grew up under a single parent household, had no idea about finances. We kind of lived that if money was in the bank, it was meant to be spent. And there was no idea of long term saving, investing, planning for your future, anything like that.
Right.
And so I got that money in my bank account and we started to spend. And in the course of about 3.5 years, my wife, who was, a new girlfriend at the time, and we were kind of playing house together, we went through that $600,000 and got into over $220,000 worth of debt between
Wow.
student loans, credit card debt, timeshare, furniture loans, everything wild that you can think of to do with your money is what we did. Car loan. And so um, we eventually realized that that was not going to be the best way for our young family. And we had a month before our first child was coming, and we said, all right, we got to clean this up. So we started to
Right.
get on a budget, track our expenses, and we eventually were able to pay off over $130,000 worth of debt in 18 months. And in the course of that, we started a podcast. We realized that like young folks our age at the time, we were, 26, 27, had not really talked about money in a super comfortable way. And
Yeah.
we realized, well, if we can blow through this money, then there's probably friends of ours who can do something similar. Maybe not to the tune of $600,000, but in a large extent. And so we realized we should probably start just sharing our journey via podcast rather than annoy my twin brother with all that we were sharing. So we started our podcast in the midst of the pandemic, 2020, and it's grown now. We just finished season 3, and it's been just an absolute blast. As you know, being a
Yeah.
podcaster, like you don't do it for the money, you do it because it's a fun thing and you love connecting with people. And we've been super
Yeah.
blessed to meet people on that journey. And then in 2021, the podcast grew to my wife starting a financial coaching business where now we kind of walk alongside others who are working on paying down their debt and figuring out how to live life the way that they want to live, spend according to their values. So that's what we do now, and it's been just a wild journey the last few years. Going from such extreme debt to here.
Wow, that is quite the wild ride of a
Yeah,
story. Um, well, first, so sorry to hear about your grandmother passing away, and like I said, my dad passed away from the exact same type of cancer. He
mm,
worked in a plant as a maintenance person in that plant, and so what did they use? He did a lot of pipe insulation, and so what did they use for insulating back in the 60s and 70s and even early 80s? I
yep,
guess asbestos. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, and so 600 grand. That's quite the windfall
yeah,
at a young age, and like you said, you don't know what to do with money at that age, and that's a substantial amount that you don't know what to do with. See how you get into that lifestyle of like just spend, 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 and the cars and whatever else you end up buying, and then all of a sudden you're trying to sustain that lifestyle. So now the money's gone, and you're another hundred or more 100 grand in debt.
yeah.
Wow, like what a wild ride. So, um, did you have like a light bulb moment or that eye opening moment at that 100 or whatever you were in debt, where the light bulb moment where it just was like, okay, we got to do something? What do you have anything specific that you can kind of relate
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, we actually call it our pumpkin muffin moment, and, it's something we kinda talk about with our clients. My wife and I are both, teachers by trade, so we were both finally into the careers and had good teaching jobs, and she was 7 months pregnant with our first, and she beat me home one day and had gone to Costco before I got home, and she had purchased pumpkin muffins while she was there. And I got
Right.
home, my pregnant wife sitting on the couch, and she said, "Hey, check the kitchen. There's these killer pumpkin muffins that I bought from Costco." And rather than be excited that my wife brought home a treat, or that my pregnant wife was kicking some craving or whatever it was,
Yeah.
whatever she was feeling, I got upset. And I'm a really happy dude by nature. My wife and
Yeah.
I are like best friends. We just don't argue, really constructive conversations. And that was the first time that we were both like, wait a minute, this is not healthy. This is not how we should be reacting over spending $7 on pumpkin muffins. Now, that's not to say that, you don't want to spend appropriately and not have, overspending at times, but $7 for pumpkin muffins from a pregnant wife, I should have been like, no brainer. And this is, that's probably my one guilt as a husband, that maybe maybe I wasn't in my best self then. But yeah, we call that our pumpkin muffin moment, where we realize, hey, this has to change because we work too hard, to feel like this, to feel that we can't even enjoy little things in life that aren't massive extravagancies.
Right. So for $7, how many pumpkin muffins was it?
This is a good thing. Back then, before inflation hit, Costco was like two muffin, packs for $7. It was like 12 muffins or something like that for $7. It was a steal.
Right.
I should have been really happy looking back now, like as the personal finance fan, I'm like, that's actually a really good value right there. That's pretty solid. It's funny when we talk about the muffin story, people on social media are always like, those things are like jam packed with calories and like artificial sweeteners. And I want to tell them, like, the message here is not the health benefits of the food. Like, I appreciate you caring about my health, but like, we're actually talking about a totally different
Yeah.
thing.
No, that's an amazing story too because, like, $7 isn't that much, but it was that $7 that made you go, "Hey, something's gotta change here."
Yeah.
And that could have easily have been $70 on something or $150 or whatever, right? But it was just that $7 that made you go, like I said, that light bulb moment where it's just that something clicked and you said,
Hmm.
"We gotta do something about this."
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then what were your first steps in actually doing something about it?
Yeah. So first steps were starting a budget that we were actually tracking. We had kind of created a false budget before that because we knew that like, good money managers have a budget, but we weren't doing anything with it. We weren't looking at it until the next month and saying, well, crap, we overspent. So it really was starting to actually budget appropriately, track our expenses so we knew where things were going, and begin to look at what our debt payments were and kind of build a strategy for taking care of them. And when we got started, we were obviously, kind of thrown into it. And the way that a lot of people get started is by listening to Dave Ramsey. He's a huge, personal finance guru. And so
Yeah,
we started following his plan, building an emergency fund, working through the baby steps and hitting the debt snowball pretty darn hard. And so that's kind of what we did. I picked up a second job as a bartender at a restaurant that I had worked at previously. So, we had some extra income coming in. We started selling everything that we could that didn't provide value to us anymore. I actually, when our first was born, 5 days after she was born, I sold my paid off Toyota RAV4 because I knew I could get a pretty penny for it, and I would,
yeah,
go buy a beater instead. And so we kind of did those typical debt payoff things. In fairness, a lot of our debt payoff journey was in COVID. So the world is shut down. I couldn't go out to eat anyways. I had, a 3-month-old at home when the world shut down. So I didn't want to go anywhere to keep my kids safe. It was just, it was what it was. And so we really kind of were put on the fast track. We also got, the US like economic stimuluses. So every stimulus check was being thrown right at our debt. We kind of hit, I don't want to say a lucky streak there because obviously COVID was a difficult time for many, but the way that our lives were set up in that moment, it really supported us in not spending money because we couldn't. We were stuck
right.
in the house all day long. And so that's kind of what we did was really just budget, track our expenses, and just attack debt with like every ounce of energy we had.
Wow, that's an amazing, come around too,
Yeah.
and so now are you fully debt free? Other than,
We're
like, maybe I was gonna say
you
other than obviously maybe a mortgage payment or carrying your credit card month, but you have no what I would call bad debt, I guess?
Yeah, so we actually are not. We One of the good things we did do with that 600,000 is we did put some of it into a home, a starter home in California, which, always has good value. We
Right,
put, I think it was, 260,000 down. Um, and so we eventually ended up selling our home to help us get towards the end of our debt payoff journey. And once we did, we were going to take the proceeds from that and pay off our student loans. But the student loan pause in America was going on. So we're like, well, let's not do that. Let's think, maybe long-term wealth instead. And look, that since our student loans have such a low interest rate, maybe there's some other investing strategies that we can look
right,
into. So we started looking into real estate investing as a way to potentially set up some type of future earnings. So we still do carry $90,000 worth of student loans. My wife has an $8,000 grant that's going to get rolled into that as well because she won't fulfill the requirements of that now that she's a business owner and not an educator. And so we're about $100,000 in student loans. And when I say that, I'm kind of like, whew, that's really heavy. It's a lot of money.
yeah,
But I realize, and I think this is part of the personal finance journey, which I'm sure you can kind of relate to or the listeners can relate to. As you get more information and as you grow, you can adapt and change. Your plan can be fluid because it
yeah,
really is a marathon, not a sprint. Like you're looking at what is the long-term goal. And yes, there are debts you want to pay off because they are crippling. Like I don't, want to say that 29% credit card debt is great for you, but there are other things that people choose to do on the path that can still lead to wealth down the road and a healthy retirement, and that's
Right.
ultimately our goal. We always say we're not trying to make millions. I just want to make enough so that my family is comfortable and okay with where we're at, and so that we can give generously. And so a good retirement down the road is okay, and if we got to tackle some student loans on the way, then I think we'll be all right eventually.
Right. Yeah, student loans can be a killer for sure.
Yeah.
And but you're right though, if they have a relatively low interest rate on those loans, I don't know what that might be, but if you can come back and say, well, but I can make more by investing, and so I'm actually offsetting that, that the interest rate on that loan by making more on investing. So I definitely get the argument there. Obviously, the flip side of that is it is great to be debt free,
Yeah.
just for your mental health, right? Like
Yeah.
just
Totally.
mentally, it's incredible. So
Yeah, we say that often that, like we say virtually debt free because we, could make the choices to pay down our student loans substantially at any point and hammer debt, hammer away at it.
right,
So we say virtually debt free, and especially while we were waiting for, the Supreme Court to rule on student loan forgiveness. But even not having credit card debt is liberating. Even being
yeah,
able to spend appropriately on a credit card and pay it off each month is so empowering. And so I can only imagine, yeah, when you finally have like the student loans paid off or a home that is paid off, right?
yeah,
I'm not a huge Ramsey fan anymore, but one of the things that I actually really did love that he said is, the grass in your backyard feels a little different when you stand in it barefoot and nobody could take it from you. When
right,
the bank doesn't own it anymore and you actually own that, that's a very liberating feeling. And so I am encouraged for that down the road. I'm still a young guy, but I'm looking forward to down the road when we've got that paid off mortgage, all the student loans are gone, and we kind of could say, we did it. We made it.
yeah. And so you mentioned real estate investing. So do you have some rentals now?
Oh my goodness, it's a wild story. So
You have
we
great stories. I love this.
Yeah, this one is we paid the stupid tax on this one too, and I kinda just remind myself, like, it's part of the journey, part of the journey. We began our real estate investing journey and purchased a home that we thought was gonna be a great opportunity for us. Unfortunately, we did not get renters in it for 14 months. The home was not passing inspections appropriately according to the city. The property manager that we were working with was dragging feet, was non-communicative, and by the end of it, when we started working with a real estate coach that we currently work with. Actually, he's been on your show, Tom, the Frugal K.
Oh yeah,
We
Tom's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. We connected and I said, "Hey, I'd love to ask you some questions about my rental." And we connected and he said, "Hey, I'd like to ask you some questions. What's going on? Because real estate investing shouldn't be like this."
Yeah,
And he really started to help coach me along and help me figure out, what I wanted to do. And so ultimately, I made the decision to sell the property at about a $25,000 loss through all of the maintenance we had to put into it with no rentals or no renters. And so we sold that property. That was the only one we had. And we're currently in the market to hopefully find another soon. Um, and so, yeah, Tom's been great. He's really helped, me understand investing because I jumped into this because I was like, well, now that I'm getting out of debt, then the next wise thing is to be an investor, I guess. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go invest? And
right.
you really do need to kind of soak up that information. And I thought I had a really good baseline, but you start working with somebody who's been doing it for almost 2 decades, and you're like, okay, I've like, you've got the secret sauce, and I
Yeah,
need to
because they've
tap
learned a
into
lot in
this.
2 decades, and
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about this day and age is so many people are willing to share freely that knowledge with you through social
Yes.
media, right? And connecting with people like Tom on through Twitter or watching the episode of him here on the Passive Income Podcast, like,
Yeah.
just incredible people, so,
And it's cool because they share their losses too. Like
yeah.
Tom hasn't been coaching me from a stance of like I've only been successful. Tom has coached me from a standpoint of like I've made these same mistakes and I'm going to help you now while you're young, dude, so that you don't have to go through them again
Yeah.
or to the extent that, he might have. So I agree with you completely. Social media has just been a wild ride of networking and meeting new people who I say it all the time only want to see my family succeed. Like I will always rock with people like that don't even know me beyond a screen or sometimes on Twitter just text,
Yeah.
but they believe that my family deserves success. I will always rock with people like that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, definitely count me as one of those people. I
Thank
would
you.
love to see you, your wife, and your children succeed. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise.
um, so beyond that, now that you're kind of, think like you said, now that you're becoming an investor, stock market, S&P 500, individual
Yeah.
companies,
Yeah,
anything in your
exactly.
portfolio?
So one of the good things I did do when I got the windfall was I started a Roth IRA at that point and invested 2 years worth into it. The maybe not wise thing that I did directly after that is on our debt free journey, I cashed out those Roth contributions. So not a ton of money, but enough to be like, well, I would not recommend that for my clients now. Like leave your retirement in there, don't touch it. We'll figure out the rest. But when we started to get better with this personal finance thing, we realized, hey, we want to get back into that whole Roth IRA thing. And so we've started to do that. The past 3 years, my wife and I have been able to max out our Roth IRAs, which has been really empowering. And we also have now been able to open up a taxable brokerage as well. And so we're doing that as well. Just with TD Ameritrade, it's getting moved over into Schwab, I think, in like 2 months or so. But just yeah, long term, plan is just stay in the stock market as long as possible. Don't, do any of the scary stuff of messing around with things and trying to day trade or anything like that. Like really just getting into S&P 500 and just chilling, just hanging out and doing our thing long term. And that's been really cool too because I think when you start the personal finance journey, investing is not super, I don't want to say clear because I think people make it clear. It's not super obtainable immediately, right? Like paying off debt is a very tangible thing. You can see, okay,
Right.
debt number goes down. I'm good, right? Or like I'm on a
Yeah.
budget and I stuck to my budget. I'm good. But with investing, it's so much more long term. So it kind of takes a backseat on the journey. And even some creators, Dave Ramsey says, like, this isn't until step 4 or something like that. Like, do all this other stuff ahead of time. So investing takes a backseat. And so it's been really cool as we've started to get out of debt, now feeling like, all right, I'm going into the investing side. Like I recognize that I can't save my way to wealth. I can't trim my budget to wealth. I've got to be investing and making these choices. And so that's been really nice too, to be like starting with a Roth and then like, okay, I'm going to start a taxable brokerage. And now thinking like, okay, we're going to set something up for our kids too. It's really cool. And it's been really fun learning. Again, there's a wealth of knowledge on social media where I can just
Yeah.
search in Twitter like dividends, or I can search index funds and just get, the top tweets of the day from people that
Yeah.
have been doing these.
Plethora of
Yeah.
information, and plus you've got Google and YouTube
Yeah.
and Investopedia, like,
Yeah.
we've talked about this, myself and some of the old timers, where we remember how things were done back in the '90s and even early
You're
2000s.
dating yourself here, Dave. Be careful.
Everybody knows how old I am, so it's not a secret. Um, yeah, so, basically, I'm agreeing with you, like, all this information is just right
Yeah.
there for anyone who wants to find that knowledge, right? It's just go get it.
Yeah. And it's been really cool. I think that there are folks who share their knowledge and then also will pull, I don't want to say pull aside. Maybe that's not right because that sounds like it's like a, private thing, but they're willing to dive more one-on-one with that as well when you're genuine and authentic. Again, because they only want to see you be successful. There are so many spaces in the world that are competitive by nature, so people don't want to share things. People want to kind of hoard those resources. They want to hoard that information, but like personal finance and getting into the space has not been like that. There's people that are like, yeah, I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to just drop all of this knowledge on Twitter in a thread and you can do what you want with it. And you're like, this is gold in, 3 tweets of 280 characters. It's pretty rad.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% on that. So, obviously, social media can be a big time waster too if
Yeah.
you're, into the other side of it, but, um, sort of my point and yours, like, either searching Twitter for things like dividends or index funds and, like, YouTube, Google, Investopedia, so many other great, resources just right there readily available.
Yeah, totally. So can I co-op your podcast for a second and ask you a question on dividends?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my, very limited understanding is that dividends can be either withdrawn to keep, as like income coming in, like, passive income, obviously the passive income posse, or
Yeah.
you can reinvest those dividends. That's my
Yeah.
understanding. What is the benefit or drawback from doing one of those or the other? Is it simply just time horizon and when you need the money, or what's the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, great question. And I'm not sure if this is more of an answer or an opinion, but so yeah, in my opinion, you're right. You can kind of once that money shows up into your brokerage account, it's cash money.
Mhm.
So and obviously, a lot of people just have what is called drip setup, which is an automatic dividend reinvestment plan. So as soon as a company pays you, say $5, that you get you purchase $5 fractional share of that exact same company. So that's just an automatic reinvestment. You can also do manual reinvestment, which is what I do. So, every 2 weeks or every month when I have a nice little chunk from my dividends, I will use that um, to buy more dividends, along with what I put in from my every other week of paychecks, right? Of that I whether it's 75 or 150 or $200 that I put in for my paycheck. Um, the idea is to grow that dividend. So, 1 month or 1 quarter, you're getting $5, and then the next dividend, because you're growing that snowball, it's now, let's just say, $5.25, and then it becomes $5.55, and then it becomes $6, and so on and so on. Now, the opposite end of that, like you said, you can just withdraw that money too. And I was very close last winter. Propane here for heating fuel was just crazy, skyrocketed last winter, and there
Mm.
was a couple months where I was like, I might need to take my dividends out just to pay my propane bill for the month. Luckily, I
Wow.
didn't end up doing it, but so yeah, you can do it, and it does depend on sort of your circumstances because maybe there is just a bill you need to pay, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, for timeline and horizon, I think is sort of uh, a great keyword or points that you made asking the question because yeah, again, the the longer you're in the market, the more those dividends are going to grow to that point where, hopefully they're not just paying the propane bill, but in 10 or 15 or 20 years, they're paying all your bills, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Does that
Well,
answer your question?
yeah, yeah, totally. I was gonna say thanks for clarifying because that's kind of my, that's been my assumption or that's kind of my initial learning, and that kind of clears up that idea for me of the comfort of seeing something tangible because that is a tangible number, right? I can see
Yeah,
like my dividends this month were this, they're going to this, down the road they're going to this, and then you can kind of track that even like we see in social media with people saying like, "Hey, my dividends hit, $1,000. Like this is great,"
yeah,
or "I'm making 2,000 a year in dividends." Like that kind of start small, but being able to track it in a tangible way is empowering and encouraging for down the road. So I'm glad that I wasn't too far off with like my understanding of it all. We are on, kind of the drip system, right? Where we're just like
yeah,
kick it back in there and let it do its thing. But I can see how some people, get to those moments where you're like, stuff's hit the fan and I've got this big thing coming up, or, maybe there's some other, big issue with the house that we're going to need some additional cash on. So I'm glad I wasn't too far off.
yeah. No, not at all. And yeah, so like you said, though, you see those tweets of $1,000, and then I'm sure you've seen other tweets where it's like, the for the year, like 70, 80, $100,000, and you're like, holy wow, right? Like
Yeah.
that's more than most people make in working a day job. So, and that's
Yeah.
sort of the ultimate goal is to get to that point. Um, Going back to sort of what I said, about maybe paying one bill, then eventually paying all your bills. Nick at Smart Net Worth One on Twitter, he's got a great tweet that I'm just paraphrasing here, but it's something to the point of: at first, your dividends will pay your cell phone bill, and then they'll pay your cell phone and your hydro bill, then your hydro bill and your cell phone bill, and your maybe your mortgage, and then eventually they pay all your bills. So, like I
Yeah.
said, that's very paraphrased of his tweet, but yeah, so it can be incredible, right?
Yeah. There's a really great book I read called House Fire, and it was written by Alan Corey. I think it's at Real Estate Maximalist on Twitter. He's part of the House Money Media brand. And his book Housefire kind of talks very much in that same way that, like, when you're purchasing a cash flowing rental property or something, don't look at it as, oh, this brings me X number each month. Look at it as, oh, this pays Y bill each month. So he says, call it the student loan payment house, call
Right.
it the cell phone house. And then eventually, if you choose to have a long term real estate portfolio, you've got all of your bills paid for in this portfolio. And then you can start to kind of tackle wealth whichever ways you want. And so I agree, right? You can look at your dividends like, yeah, it's, maybe this month it's covering the Applebee's 2 for 20 date night, right? And
Yeah.
then down the road, you're like, now it's covering all of my expenses and then some, and I get to live, the way that I want.
Yeah. And then you also see the tweets too, and, going back to sort of mentioning some of the dividend, well, maybe we didn't mention, but dividend trackers. I don't personally use them, I just use an Excel spreadsheet to track my dividends, but you hear the term or see the term PADI, PADI, projected annual dividend income. You see that a lot on Twitter, and so that's another very interesting metric of, every time that you purchase a share of a company, that projected annual dividend income increases.
Mm. What have you found is one of the best, like, beginner tools? Obviously, building an Excel spreadsheet, like, you're pro at this, like, you have a podcast, right? Like, teaching others and bringing on others to share their insight. What have you found is one of, like, the beginner tools that is worth exploring or figuring out those numbers?
Well, like I said, I don't use any of the apps myself, so for me, it's just that Excel spreadsheet, and honestly, I think that probably is a great place to start. And even if you don't pay for your Microsoft subscription, obviously you can use Google. I think it's called Google
Yeah,
Sheets
yeah.
for free. So um, I think that's probably a really good spot to start. And then there are so many others out there that can give you better references on what apps that you may want to use. Because, like I said, I don't actually use any of them
Yeah.
myself.
I'm such a goal oriented person that, like, now my brain just spins of, like, I want to go and, like, set up the numbers and crunch it and, like, look at, like, what does the future look like and how do I get to that spot? I mean, I don't know, maybe I do that to a fault. Maybe I need to kind of just, go outside, go on a
Yeah,
walk with the family and set it and forget it. But I just like talking about it. I like learning about it. I'm a teacher by nature, so hearing about all the things people are doing and, like, learning myself is encouraging. So
yeah,
maybe I got
for
to tone
sure.
that down.
Yeah, and I think personally, why I don't use one of those apps for is almost kind of maybe the opposite of what you just said. Is on those apps that shows your that patty projected annual and income increasing every single time, and I don't know if I need that distraction, right? Like, I'm just happy to go,
Yeah.
okay, every month I enter my dividends into my Excel spreadsheet, see what that month adds up to, and then on January 1st, I can add up what the year looked like, right?
Yeah.
So that's and again,
That'll be
that's just my way of doing it. Not that there's a sort of a right or wrong way.
Yeah, that'll be my next thing. Watch. I'll check back in at, January 1st, 2024 and say, all right, I've got it set up, Dave. I'm ready to go. I'm going to be checking, the brokerage every month and just looking and seeing where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, we never did get around to discussing if you own any of these or anything, any ETFs or anything index funds in your portfolio. Do you have any dividend paying companies or
Oh
funds?
gosh, yes. Oh, and I just forgot the ticker symbol of it. What is it?
What's the
Oh
name of the
geez,
company?
it's one of the Schwab funds.
Okay.
Gosh, I can't remember, but I was looking at it the past few weeks and I was like, this is kind of cool. I'm like exploring this a little bit more and, like, because I very much so have been like, just set it and forget it. And now
Yeah.
going in and looking and seeing, like, oh, this is what this means. And, like, looking at, like, where each dividend is paying out and stuff. Um, oh man. Yeah, it's one of the Schwab funds. I can't remember exactly which it is. Um, but another part of it all is I've wanted to start to teach my kids about investing. And I think one of the best ways to teach kids about investing is finding the things obviously that they're interested in and investing in those ways. And so I want to start to kind of do that as well. Of, like, find the companies that my kids as they age enjoy and, like supporting and maybe have like ethical reasons to support them.
Right.
And so I can teach investing and all of those other skills as well. And then I know that there's many of them that have dividend payouts, right? That's what they do.
Yeah.
So that's going to kind of be next on our like parenting list as well. As like, okay, with our
Yeah.
eldest, eventually when she can start to understand what numbers actually are, start to talk about that more.
Yeah, the whole time you were speaking to that, all I could think is Disney. Kids obviously
Yeah.
love Disney, and Disney is a great company to invest in. So, not for
Yeah.
advice, but I have a feeling you're heading straight towards Disneyland.
Yeah, for sure. My wife, has already planned that, when each kid turns 5, we're taking a trip. So maybe that's it, right? If you get them in the car and we say, hey, you get mom and dad solo for a week. We're going to Disney. Oh, and by the way, we bought you some stock in Disney.
Yeah, that'd be a very interesting car ride for sure.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I guess the main thing is that as long as we end up there for the kid, right? We can't be like, we bought you some stock in Disney. Okay, let's go back inside now.
I'm gonna bring up your link tree here, and we'll just quickly go through it because you have quite a bit. Obviously, all your
We do.
socials up here at the top: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, email, and what's this last one?
That's Apple Podcasts. That's where you can
Apple.
listen to the podcast as well. Yep.
So basically, I
Yeah.
will have this link in the description below, so you will be able to find all of the price of avocado toast content out there everywhere on all the social platforms. And then, is there anything else in here that you want to kind of speak to?
Yeah, I would say, we're in the process right now of building a website, but the Linktree has been great for us just as we've gotten started, the last few years. The top link there is Plutus Awards. They kind of support personal finance content creators. And so we posted that in there in case anybody wants to nominate us for anything that they think we resonate with. I like to think that we're a pretty cool couple. So if people want to say our personal finance content for couples is good,
Yep.
we've got our everything but the bagel community. When we were going through our debt free journey, we realized that we really wanted a community of folks who were going through the same and that we could talk with more about it. And so we've got a community there where you can get access to our budget and our twice monthly group calls. You can come on and chat with folks around the US that are maybe going through similar things and get some advice, get some feedback. And then we've got our financial coaching application. We take applicants every quarter just because it kind of helps us really invest our time in the folks that we're working with and really give them all of our attention. So we're going to open that back up again in September. We take applications, but we don't really follow up on them until probably about September. And then we've got links for our podcast as well as my podcast called Not Another Personal Finance Podcast that she does with V Frugal Fox. She is our social media manager for Instagram. She's just been a tremendous friend of ours. And then we've got a link to join our newsletter. As our website gets up, we'll hopefully start writing a little bit more. I was a language arts teacher, so I really love writing, and it's something I'm excited to explore more. But the link tree there has just been super beneficial. And then, of course, you can find us on all the social platforms and stuff. I myself get to explore the Twitter and TikTok brands. I like to think that I'm, relatively comfortable on Twitter, but TikTok has been a totally different beast. So shout out to you for doing the long form video format because YouTube, I'm like, whew, YouTube and YouTube shorts. I know that people are diving into those so heavily. And I'm like, God bless y'all.
Yeah, and there's your Twitter up on screen as well. So be sure to give Justin a follow at uh, at Price Avocado, I believe it is.
Yeah. Price Avocado. Yep.
Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and spending time with me here. We're just talking
Yeah.
about those socials, and obviously Threads is brand new, just came out 2 days ago, I believe. So you'll have to
Yeah.
update your link tree to have your Threads in there.
I
Uh, what
know.
what are your thoughts on Threads so far?
Threads a trip. My wife's the one that gets to run the threads because she runs our Instagram. And it's so funny because she was like, "Oh, you can send it to Twitter." And I'm like, well, yeah, like that's the pettiness of it all, right? Is you can send your thread immediately to tweet. I think Twitter is such a cool social media space. I know that some people think of it as like the cesspool of social media. I think Twitter rocks. I think that you have to be concise and clear to get your point across. I'm not looking at flashy videos. I just get to see exactly what you're thinking and feeling. I really like Twitter. I'm interested to see how Threads takes off because of the seamlessness with working with Instagram and Facebook and Meta as a brand. I think
Right.
that it's going to be really interesting to kind of try and take on that whole beast. I'm glad that I don't have to do the threads as well. I'm just going to stay in Twitter land and enjoy my space over there.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I prefer Twitter at this point. Well, I haven't spent a lot of time on Threads. I've checked it out, but um, it's not polluted with ads yet, but I'm sure that will come.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I've found that so many things on Threads come up from people that I don't follow. Like I've only followed a few people that already know from Twitter, anyways. So it's like
Yeah.
I barely see their threads. I'm like, for now, I'll just stick on Twitter, even though obviously there's a lot of ads on Twitter.
Hmm.
And I mean, you're right. Twitter can be a cesspool if you're in the wrong place, but if you're in the
Totally.
div twit and fin twit community, I think you're doing all right.
Agreed. Totally agreed. And I've noticed that as I start to kind of like niche down more and more, my timeline gets a little bit more cleaned up. And I'm like, okay, this is the echo chamber I want to be in.
Nice. Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and spending time with me on this episode of the Passive Income Podcast. Any parting words or thoughts before we sign off?
I would just say thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. And, I just love when people spend their time trying to educate people from a lens of, again, just wanting others to be successful. Like, you're not making a ton of money, probably anything on podcasting, right? Like, you spend money to podcast, but you do
Yeah.
it because it's something that feels good and it fills your cup. And again, I'm always going to rock with people like that. So thanks for having me on. Shout out to your listeners. I hope that, the growth just continues. I hope it just skyrockets for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you're right. I do this. So I do get to talk to people like yourself. Like I said, you're now episode 86, so 86 different people. I'm hoping I can do something special, 14 more guests for number 100. But it's just been exactly like you said, an absolute wild ride, a great trip of meeting and discussing, personal finance and passive income and real estate and side hustles and so many different things with so many different
Yeah,
people. It's just been such an amazing journey, and I really can't uh, uh, thank everyone enough. Thank all the past guests, all the future guests, all the viewers, all the subscribers, everyone who has shown support. So yeah, thank you so much.
definitely. Definitely. Keep doing big things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you're still here watching over 40 minutes later, please be sure to hit subscribe.